Okay, now that we know how we get possible ions in order to get electricity inside our bodies, we need to understand a couple of very important concepts. The first one is going to be the resting membrane potential. Next one is going to be the depolarization. Another one is going to be repolarization. And the last one is going to be action potential. In this figure, here's the electrical activity. When the cell is at rest, resting membrane potential, the voltage inside your cell is going to be negative 70 millivolts. What happens? Sodium goes inside the cell, therefore the cell becomes positive. All the way up to positive 30. How do you call this part of the curve going up? Depolarization. Then what happens when it's all the way up in here? It will go down back again to negative 70. How do you achieve that? By removing potassium from the cell, because the potassium is also positive. How do you call this part of the curve when potassium goes down? That's going to be repolarization. Therefore, what is depolarization and repolarization? That's what the action potential is. Once this is completed, then your muscle is going to move. So the next topic is behavior of skeletal muscle fibers. So here comes the stimulus from the brain using a nerve. It reaches the end of the nerve. And then what the nerve is going to do is going to release acetylcholine inside the synaptic cleft. Acetylcholine will diffuse through the synaptic cleft, and it is going to reach these purple receptors that you have here, which are going to be receptors for acetylcholine, and these receptors are going to be located in the muscle. What happens with acetylcholine when it attaches to the receptor? It opens channels for sodium. As you can see here, open channels for sodium. Potassium also starts flowing out, but the amount of potassium that flows out is very minimal. So then the main concept is that sodium actually goes inside the cell. So then once the sodium starts going inside, that activates even more channels and more sodium goes inside. So what happens when the sodium starts going inside the cell? The voltage inside your cell starts changing. We said it goes from negative into positive. So then this positivity is transmitted right here inside the cell through the three tubules. These arrows are showing you the electrical activity, how it's being transferred inside the muscle cell. This electrical positivity that happens inside your cell is going to activate the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the muscle. What happens when the calcium gets released into the muscle? Calcium is going to attach to troponin. Troponin activates tropomyosin. Tropomyosin slides down, and it makes the active sites available for myosin. Now, myosin, in the presence of ATP, is going to attach to the active site. As you can see here, ATP plus phosphorus is going to give you, obviously, ATP. Once this is attached, then this will recall back, as you can see right here, therefore moving the actin, and that's what's going to cause the sliding filament mechanism theory, which explains how the muscle actually contracts. One step after that you need to understand that the actin and the myosin will get separated again in order to initiate the contraction later on, but then this separation happens because of the presence of ATP. So the sliding filament mechanism explains how the calcium triggers the entire mechanism to contract the muscle. However, you contract the muscle due to the fact that there is an action potential from this point to this point right here. Okay, and the action potential, as we said, is going to be depolarization and repolarization. Depolarization happens because sodium goes inside the cell. Repolarization happens because potassium goes outside the cell. One very important concept to understand is the sodium-potassium pump. If you think about it, if all the sodium goes inside the cell, eventually the cell will run out of sodium to go in. If the potassium goes out of the cell, then eventually the cell will run out of potassium to go outside the cell. So then how come you reestablish this potassium back in here, and how you take out the sodium from inside the cell? That's when the sodium-potassium pump works. So the sodium goes in, but the sodium-potassium pump pumps the sodium back out. The potassium goes out, but the sodium-potassium pump pumps the potassium back in, therefore reestablishing the potential necessary for this process to happen over and over again.
Okay, we finished with contraction. Now we're going to start with relaxation. How many steps then we need in order to get relaxation? Acetylcholine gets released. What you're going to do? You reabsorb the acetylcholine back into the nerve. In addition to that, in the synaptic cleft, there is an enzyme. This enzyme is called acetylcholinesterase, and this enzyme is going to destroy the acetylcholine. So if there is no acetylcholine, then there's no more contraction. Step number 2, we reabsorb the calcium. And step number 3, we use ATP in order to separate myosin from the actin. Okay, if we scroll down, we get to the next concept, which is the length-tension relationship. Basically, this means that the best contraction that you're going to get depends on how your muscle is If it's overly stretched or over-contracted, it will not get a good contraction. There is an optimum resting length, which is going to give you the best contraction. Twitch. We need a nerve to make a muscle move, but all the stimulus that a nerve is going to produce needs certain strength in order to achieve that. Sometimes the amount, but just barely amount of a stimulus will produce a twitch. The twitch doesn't perform any type of work, but it's a contraction. If you change the frequency of electrical stimulus, then you can change the strength of twitches. And here, for example, they increase the strength of an electrical stimulus. And look at the muscle contraction. You see it increases? And if we can get to the other one, where you can see here they change the frequency. And this one, you can even see the relaxation here. Okay, we keep going. Other type of contractions that we have are going to be isometric and isotonic. Isometric, iso means the same. Metric means length. So imagine that you're pushing a wall. Your muscle length will not change because you can't move the wall. So in this case, do you produce a force to move the wall? Yes. However, did that length of your muscle change? No, because you were not able to move the wall. And this is called isometric contraction. The other one is isotonic contraction. Isotonic contraction is when you produce the same amount of force all the time. For example, lifting a dumbbell. If you want to produce a movement in which you can actually put the dumbbell on the floor, you have to maintain the same force, otherwise this will drop to the floor. Same thing applies in here. If this is 5 pounds and you produce 5 pounds, you're going to be able to lift the dumbbell this way. But if you produce more force, this will come out flying because you're producing more force than what you need. So these two types of contractions are going to be isotonic because you have to maintain the tone. Otherwise, in this example, you will drop the dumbbell to the floor. When this comes towards you, this one is called isotonic concentric. When this one goes away from you, this is isotonic eccentric. The next topic is muscle metabolism. In other words, what do muscles need in order to contract? As you can see in there, ATP. Immediate energy from 0 to 10 seconds. And you're going to get this through the creatine kinase. So this is going to be able to produce ATP for the first 10 seconds. The next one is short-term energy. This one is from 10 seconds to 40 seconds. This one is going to be through anaerobic respiration. That is step necessary in order to create this glycolysis. And you produce 2 ATPs. The next one is long-term energy. Long-term energy is from 40 seconds until you finish running. In this case, this is going to be aerobic respiration, and this produces 36 ATPs. Next topic, fatigue and endurance. Immediate ATP through the creatine kinase. From 10 to 40 seconds, short-term ATP, you get it from anaerobic respiration, which is going to be glycolysis. And from 40 seconds till the end of your race, there's going to be aerobic respiration. You get fatigue because you use your muscles for a long period of time. For example, if you're running a marathon, then you're going to get fatigue because you use your muscles too much and for too long. What reasons produce this fatigue? Potassium accumulation, ADP accumulation. When you're running, for example, a marathon, at the very end, you are very tired. Are you breathing properly? No. So even though you're running, you're not getting the amount of oxygen that you need. So you owe your body oxygen. What happens when the race finishes? You start breathing very fast because you need to repay that oxygen that you were not breathing when you were finishing the race. And this is called repayment of oxygen debt. The next topic is physiological classes of muscle fibers, and we have two. As you can see here, the first one is a slow oxidative. If this one is slow, then the other one is going to be fast. And we can see that in here. You can see here fast are clear, slow or dark. This is because muscles are going to have different characteristics because they're going to perform different type of activity. For example, we have the gastrocnemius, which is for jumping. You're going to have more of these light fibers. The soleus, which is going to allow you to stand up for a long period of time, is going to have more of these dark fibers. Muscular strength and conditioning. Strength and conditioning depends on how you are going to exercise and how you're going to use your muscles, and you're going to get more by using your muscles more frequently. And how do you achieve that? Well, you can use resistance exercise or endurance exercise. Resistance exercise is against some weight, for example, when you lift weights at the gym. And endurance is, for example, when you run. And which one is more beneficial? Well, none of them alone. It's better when you do cross training, in which you do part of resistance exercise as well as endurance exercise during your daily physical activities.